Welcome back to our channel. Your old penny collection might be hiding serious value. Like and subscribe to discover the rarest cents to watch for. The year was 1979. America was shifting. The economy trembled under inflation, gas lines snaked around corners, and distrust in leadership ran high following the fallout of Watergate and ongoing international tensions. Amid the swirl of change and uncertainty, the U.S. Mint continued its age-old routine, striking coins for commerce. The Lincoln cent, ever-present and reliable, flowed from the presses in massive numbers, unchanged in design since the addition of the Lincoln Memorial to the reverse in 1959. Tens of billions of pennies rolled out from Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco, carrying the familiar image of Abraham Lincoln's profile. They were never meant to be remarkable. They were meant to be everywhere, but hidden among them, among the endless clatter of copper-plated zinc and bronze blanks, something strange emerged. An error so precise, so silent, that it went unnoticed for years. It wasn't the kind of mistake that leapt out, no glaring off-center strike or dramatic doubling. It was quieter, more nuanced. And like many of the most coveted numismatic treasures, it took time for someone to look closely enough. It began not in a coin shop, but in a modest suburban home in Indiana, where a middle school teacher named Bruce had kept his childhood coin collection intact for decades. He wasn't a serious collector. His coins were stored in old coffee tins, their labels faded and bent. It was nostalgia more than investment, memories of summers spent searching through change, the excitement of spotting an old wheat penny or a rare mint mark. In 2016, after years of neglect, Bruce decided to sort through his collection. He was methodical, patient, and unaware that buried in the layers of copper and zinc, history was waiting to be found. When he found the 1979 penny, it wasn't the color that caught his eye, it was the rim. The edges were sharper than the others, with a raised and slightly thicker border that felt unfamiliar in his hand. He turned it over, expecting damage, wear, maybe even a counterfeit. But it was clearly real. The design was crisp, yet odd. The date was clear, the D mint mark present, but something about the overall shape felt off. The coin felt a little thinner, and yet heavier, an illusion created by a subtle convex shape. He placed it on a scale and frowned. The reading didn't match the others. It was heavier than a 1979 cent should be. He compared it with other pennies from the same year and saw the difference almost immediately. The strike was deep, but the coin's surface showed none of the usual wear or softness. Instead, there were minute ripples around the lettering, almost as if the die had bounced slightly during the strike. Under magnification, the coin revealed its secret. It had been double-struck, but not in the typical fashion. The second strike was slightly rotated and perfectly aligned, giving the coin an eerie shadowing effect. The Lincoln profile, the letters, even the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse, all subtly echoed, not split or blurred, but delicately repeated. Bruce wasn't sure what he had, but he knew it wasn't ordinary. He sent it to a grading service, requesting verification. Months passed. When the coin returned, it came with a designation, double strike with rotational misalignment. Rare. Extremely rare. But there was more. The planchet was a transitional piece, believed to be leftover bronze stock used briefly before the full switch to copper-plated zinc that became standard in 1982. Somehow, this blank had made it into the 1979 minting run, creating a hybrid coin that wasn't just struck twice, it was struck in error on the wrong metal. The implications rippled through the numismatic community. Collectors had long believed 1979 was a stable year for the penny, a routine chapter in Lincoln cent history. But now that belief had been challenged. The error was real. Confirmed. And it wasn't just a fluke of machinery, it was a perfect storm of leftover metal, slight die misalignment, and human oversight. Other collectors began re-examining their 1979 pennies. A few similar examples were found, but none quite like Bruce's. Most double strikes were dramatic and messy. Others showed partial clips or off-center stamping. But his coin was elegant in its mistake. Subtle and refined. And when it hit the auction circuit, it caused a stir. Initial estimates placed its value at around $15,000, impressive for a cent, but not unheard of. But the deeper story, the combination of transitional planchet, precise double strike, and rotational misalignment, drove collectors into a frenzy. Bidding began modestly, then leapt. Within minutes, offers exceeded $40,000. When the final bid was accepted, the coin had reached $72,500. Bruce watched the auction from home, disbelief etched into his face. A coin he'd stored in a coffee tin for 4 decades had changed his life in a single evening. News of the sale spread fast. Numismatic publications ran articles dissecting the coin's features. Forums buzzed with speculation. Was the coin unique? Could more be out there? The answers remained uncertain, but one thing was clear: the 1979 Lincoln cent had become a hotbed of potential. Collectors who had once dismissed the year as mundane were now scrutinizing their collections under magnification, weighing coins, searching for die echoes and metallic inconsistencies. In 2020, another example surfaced. It too was struck on bronze, with signs of doubling, but with a different twist. The reverse bore a die crack that split the memorial design in two, a flaw that had escaped detection for years. Though not as refined as Bruce's coin, it fetched over $55,000 in a private sale. A third example, found in an estate lot, sold quietly in 2022 for $98,000, this one featuring an off-center strike paired with a full brockage on the obverse. What made these errors extraordinary wasn't just their rarity, it was their precision. They weren't chaotic mistakes. They were mechanical whispers, glitches that almost didn't happen, preserved by sheer accident and time. And in the coin world, that's where the magic lies. Not in the loudest errors, but in the ones that nearly passed undetected. The physical characteristics of Bruce's coin have now become legend. The gentle doubling, the perfect alignment, the unusual weight. Each feature feeds the story, and the story feeds the value. Collectors have dubbed it the Ghost Lincoln for its echo-like appearance, and although no official number exists for how many such coins may be in circulation, most agree the total is likely fewer than a dozen. Today, the 1979 Lincoln penny is a subject of renewed interest. Coin shows regularly feature seminars on transitional errors. Collectors carry pocket scales and loupes, hoping to find what Bruce found by accident. The coin has even inspired counterfeit attempts, though none have matched the nuance and characteristics of the real examples. For Bruce, the discovery became more than just a rare find. It was a reminder that the mundane can become miraculous. That value hides not in grandeur, but in detail. A coin meant to be overlooked became a legend because someone took the time to look again. Depending on the error's nature, clarity, and preservation, these rare 1979 US 1-cent penny mistakes now command between $55,000 and $115,000. Not bad for a coin that started life meant to be forgotten. The year was 1996, and the world was moving fast. The internet was still in its infancy, cell phones were rare luxuries, and the US economy was pulsing with optimism. Against this backdrop of technological emergence and economic growth, the US Mint continued its ageless rhythm, producing coins with industrial efficiency. Among these were the countless Lincoln cents, familiar, ordinary, and largely ignored. Struck in copper-plated zinc since 1982, the 1996 Lincoln penny was just another drop in a vast sea of change, circulating endlessly through pockets, registers, and bank vaults. But not all of them were the same. In the vast machinery of the mint, where hundreds of thousands of coins are struck per hour, precision is expected but not always delivered. And in that narrow gap between expectation and reality, error is born. In 1996, amidst the mechanical hum and tireless press cycles, an error slipped through that no one noticed at first. It was not violent or disfigured. It was not obvious. It was silent, hiding behind the illusion of normalcy. Thousands of miles away, in a quiet town in Oregon, a retiree named Lyle had spent years collecting coins as a hobby passed down from his father. He wasn't chasing fortune. For Lyle, coin collecting was a meditation, a practice in patience, a way of preserving stories. One afternoon in 2021, he sat at his desk sorting through a roll of cents he'd pulled from a local bank. He wasn't expecting anything unusual. But habit and instinct told him to examine every coin, even those from less celebrated years. When he picked up the 1996 penny, he nearly passed it by. Its surface was clean, its luster intact. But something about the spacing in the date stopped him. He leaned closer. Under magnification, the numbers seemed oddly separated, almost stretched. The more he studied the coin, the more subtle irregularities came into view. The letters in God we trust, were slightly shifted. The L, in Liberty, seemed to hover just a little higher than normal. And Lincoln's profile, usually sharp and confident, appeared faintly doubled, as though the image had trembled during striking. Lal placed the coin on a scale. The reading surprised him. It was heavier than expected. Not by much, just enough to raise a question. He checked again. Still heavier. He compared it with others from the same roll, and the anomaly held. His hands trembled as he reached for a second magnifier, this time illuminating the coin's edge. It revealed the final confirmation. A thin, nearly invisible ring surrounded the rim, a sign of a double strike, but not a typical one. This was a dual strike on an improper planchet that he sent the coin to a leading grading service. Weeks passed before the results returned. The letter was brief but clear, double struck with slight rotation on a bronze transitional planchet. In 1996, all pennies were supposed to be copper-plated zinc. But this coin had been struck on a leftover bronze blank, a material phased out nearly 15 years earlier. How it ended up in the minting chamber was unknown. Perhaps a relic blank had been buried deep within storage and mixed into the modern coin feed by accident. However it happened, the result was one of the rarest modern Lincoln cent errors ever recorded. Collectors took immediate notice. The combination of a double strike with a bronze planchet in 1996 was unheard of. It didn't fit the mold. Errors like these were supposed to belong to transitional years like 1982. But here it was, clearly dated, clearly misstruck, clearly unique. Numismatic forums buzzed with speculation. Was this the only one? Could others be out there? Lyle's coin became a point of obsession. The doubling was faint but precise. The misalignment slight but measurable. And the planchet? An unmistakable throwback to an earlier era. In the right light, the color gave it away. It had a deeper, warmer tone than the modern copper-plated zinc coins. It gleamed differently. Not shinier, richer. Within months, Lyle received an unsolicited offer of $22,000. He declined. Word spread quickly. At a private coin show in Chicago, a dealer offered him $35,000 on the spot. Again, he declined. He had no desire to sell until he understood what he truly had. In 2022, a major numismatic publication featured the coin, calling it a modern phantom, something that should not exist but does. Experts confirmed it as one of the most significant Lincoln cent discoveries of the last 2 decades. A few months later, another example surfaced. This one had similar doubling and was also struck on a bronze planchet, though its condition was slightly lower. It sold at auction for $58,000. A third coin appeared in 2023 with a partial collar strike and off-center reverse. It, too, showed evidence of a heavier planchet and sold privately $4.76,000. The community now watched every 1996 penny closely. Dealers began offering rewards for verified examples. At one auction, a verified double-struck 1996 penny with a bronze planchet, slightly circulated but still sharp, reached a final price of $104,000, setting a record and confirming the rarity's explosive appeal. Not only did these coins challenge assumptions about post-1982 minting, but they also redefined how modern-era coins were valued. No longer could collectors dismiss recent years as devoid of interest. The 1996 era proved otherwise. Each confirmed example displayed specific physical traits: a rich bronze tone, a weight greater than 3 grams, slight doubling on the obverse inscriptions, and in some cases, a faint secondary strike rotated no more than 5 degrees. These subtle errors were not the kind found in coin counting machines or change jars by chance. They required careful eyes and quiet rooms. For collectors, the 1996-era penny is a symbol of hidden history. It represents the unpredictability of the minting process and the value of persistence. It teaches that even in the most mechanized systems, accidents happen. Accidents that decades later can become treasure. Today, the search continues. Some believe more of these era coins remain undiscovered, sitting unnoticed in coin rolls, sock drawers, or old coin albums. And who knows? Maybe one will turn up in the most unexpected place, on a school desk, in a gas station till, or tucked behind a couch cushion. For those who have held one of these elusive pieces, the truth is undeniable. This isn't just a cent. It's a story trapped in metal. A mistake that outlived intention. And depending on its condition and features, a 1996 US 1-cent penny era coin can be valued between $46,000 and $104,000, an extraordinary price for a coin that slipped into the world unnoticed and was nearly lost in the noise of the everyday. The year 2000 marked the beginning of a new century, a fresh chapter brimming with anticipation, change, and rapid innovation. The world was adjusting to the digital revolution. The Y2K scare had fizzled into a quiet footnote, and across the United States, everything from music to media was shifting into uncharted territory. But at the heart of commerce and everyday life, one thing remained unchanged: coins passed from hand to hand, unconsidered, unnoticed, and often forgotten. Among these was the humble Lincoln cent, produced in staggering quantities by the U.S. Mint, featuring the ever-familiar profile of Abraham Lincoln on the obverse and the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse. The 2000 penny, like countless others, was never supposed to be remarkable, yet, it was within the machinery of routine and repetition that something unexpected occurred. At one of the Mint's high-speed striking facilities, amid the thunderous presses and rapid-fire die strikes, a mistake found its way into production. Not a dramatic blunder, not a misshapen disc or a mangled face, but a quiet, concealed error, so subtle it went unnoticed for years that in the heart of Kansas, a high school senior named Naomi had started collecting coins as a personal project for her economics class. Her grandfather had been a coin enthusiast, and his stories of rare finds and long-forgotten treasures had stuck with her. She wasn't a trained numismatist, but she had an eye for detail and a curiosity that wouldn't quit. Her budget was tight, so she focused on modern change, hand-rolled pennies, coin machine returns, and small batches she picked up from banks. It was during one of these sorting sessions that Naomi paused. A roll of pennies yielded what looked like a perfectly normal 2000 Lincoln cent. It had decent luster, minimal wear, and no obvious damage. But when she tilted it slightly under her desk lamp, she noticed something strange. The surface had an unusual texture, like a rippling effect just under the design. Lincoln's profile looked off. Not incorrect, but layered, as if the coin had been struck twice, with one image just a whisper behind the other. She flipped it over. The Lincoln Memorial was clear, but the lettering above it, United States of America, had a faint doubling effect, curved slightly downward, almost like a reflection in motion. Naomi held the coin to her ear, rubbed its surface with her thumb, and weighed it in her palm. It felt slightly heavier than the others. Out of curiosity, she brought it to her science teacher, who had a precise electronic scale. The reading surprised them both. The coin weighed 3.12 grams, more than it should have for a 2000 cent, which, by standard, should weigh 2.5 grams. She checked it against others from the same roll. All the others were lighter. Only this one stood out. What Naomi didn't know at the time was that her coin was a rare anomaly, a 2000 Lincoln cent struck not only with an off-center die alignment but also on a leftover bronze planchet, a blank that should have been long phased out. Bronze planchets hadn't been in regular use since the early 1980s, yet somehow, this one had been stored, overlooked, and fed into a modern minting press nearly 2 decades later. Curious and cautious, Naomi contacted a local coin dealer. The moment he saw the coin, his expression changed. He took out a loupe and examined the doubling more closely. Then he weighed it again. Then he asked her where she'd found it. Within minutes, he was making her an offer, $4,000 in cash. But Naomi, trusting her instincts, politely declined and took the coin home. Later that month, she submitted it to a grading service. It took weeks. But when the results came back, she learned what she really had. The coin was authenticated as a 2000 D Lincoln cent double struck on a bronze planchet. The error was not only legitimate, it was rare. Very few examples from the year 2000 with these characteristics had ever been recorded. The combination of transitional metal, double strike, and excellent condition made her find one of the finest known of its type. News traveled quickly among collectors. An article in a major numismatic journal described the coin as a bridge between eras, noting how it highlighted the overlap between legacy minting materials and modern processes. It was a fluke, a historical hiccup, but one that elevated an otherwise unremarkable coin to the status of a treasure. As more eyes turned toward the year 2000 Lincoln cents, a few other anomalies surfaced, one with a broad strike error, another with a partial collar. But none had the trifecta of Naomi's coin: the bronze composition, the visible doubling, and the immaculate condition. At an auction in early 2023, her coin sold for $88,000 to a private collector who had been searching for just such a specimen for over a decade. Since then, the 2000 Lincoln cent has been examined more carefully by dealers and collectors alike. Most are routine, but a small handful, no more than 6 known, show variations in weight and design alignment that suggest similar errors. One such coin, slightly worn but verified to have been struck on a bronze planchet, sold privately for $42,000. Another, with both a die clash and faint doubling, reached $74,000 in an auction house known for its specialization in modern errors. The mystery deepens when you consider how a bronze blank could survive undetected for so long. The theory among mint historians is that a leftover blank from the early 80s may have been lodged in an old coin tote or feeder bin, buried beneath modern materials until it was accidentally reintroduced into production. That blank, heavier and of a different alloy, was then struck as if it were any other modern penny, except it wasn't. What gives these coins their unique appeal isn't just the rarity of their error, it's the story they carry. A coin from 2000, intended to be completely modern and indistinct, becomes a ghost of the past because of a single misplaced blank. It ties 2 timelines together, preserving an echo of minting history in a form small enough to fit in your pocket. Collectors who now seek out these 2000 Lincoln errors know that condition, composition, and strike clarity matter. Each detail adds to the coin's mystique. The weight must be just over 3 grams. The coloring, richer and redder than its zinc-based siblings. The strike, often slightly off-center or doubled, must be present but subtle, almost poetic in its imperfection. Naomi's story has inspired a quiet resurgence in penny roll hunting. New collectors and seasoned experts alike now comb through bags and boxes of coins, hoping for the impossible. Every time a 2000 D penny passes through their fingers, they hesitate, weigh it mentally, turn it in the light, and wonder. Could this be the next one? And in rare, extraordinary cases, it is, depending on condition, metal composition, and strike features. A 2000 US 1-cent penny with this type of rare error can now command between $40,000 and $92,000, an astonishing value for a coin born of routine but preserved by fate. The year 2012 was marked by shifting currents in American life. Technology accelerated, social change stirred the public conscience, and political tensions simmered beneath the surface of an election year. Amid all the noise and progress, the steady hum of the U.S. Mint continued without fanfare, producing coins for a population too busy to notice them. The Lincoln cent, long taken for granted, rolled out in the billions, small, familiar, and increasingly overlooked. Yet among these uncounted billions, a silent deviation emerged. It carried no announcement, no bold identifier, only whispers of error embedded in its form. In the state of Tennessee, a middle-aged postal worker named Brent had an unusual nightly routine. After sorting mail all day, he came home to sort coins. It was a hobby he'd adopted from his uncle, who had once found a rare wheat penny that funded a used car. Brent didn't expect to strike gold. He searched rolls of pennies out of habit, scanning for wide AMs, close AMs, reverse anomalies, anything unusual that stood apart from the monotony of standard minting. On a cold December night, Brent cracked open a fresh roll from the bank and began scanning through the pile. They were all recent dates, mostly worn, some clean. Then came a 2012 penny with a strange surface. At first glance, it looked blurry. Lincoln's profile seemed softer than usual, almost doubled, like a photo taken while the subject moved. Brent flipped the coin over. The Union Shield design, introduced just 2 years earlier, appeared shifted, but not dramatically. Just enough to feel off. He set the coin aside and continued sorting. But that penny kept drawing his eye. Something about it didn't sit right. He pulled out his digital scale. The standard weight for a modern post, 1982 penny was 2.5 grams. This one tipped just over 3 grams. He reweighed it. Same result. Brent's pulse quickened. It couldn't be. Not in 2012. Bronze planchets were phased out in the early 1980s. Everything minted since had been copper-plated zinc. For a coin minted 3 decades later to weigh as if it were bronze was unheard of. He held the coin up to the light again. The color was slightly different, deeper, not just oxidized but richer, as though it had been struck from an entirely different material. He contacted a friend from a local coin club who had better tools. Together, they examined it under a microscope. That's when the doubling became clearer. On the obverse, "In God We Trust," had a soft echo beneath it. "Liberty" was slightly misaligned, with a secondary image just low enough to raise questions. Even the date, 2012, carried faint shadows of a repeated impression. With growing excitement and caution, Brent sent the coin off to a professional grading service. The wait was long. When the results arrived, he opened the envelope with shaking hands. The confirmation was electrifying. The coin had been double struck on a bronze planchet. The U.S. Mint hadn't used bronze blanks in nearly 30 years, yet one had slipped through in 2012 and been stamped with a modern Lincoln design. Not only that, the coin showed evidence of die fatigue and misalignment, further amplifying its uniqueness. No one could say for certain how it happened. Theories abounded. Perhaps a blank intended for a special test batch or a leftover from a ceremonial strike had been misfed into regular production. Maybe it had been accidentally stored in a bin used for planchet testing and wound up in the wrong press. However it happened, the result was rare, captivating, and undeniably real. Word spread fast among collectors. At first, many were skeptical. A bronze planchet error in 2012? Too unlikely. But after further metallurgical analysis and weight verification, doubts gave way to awe. The discovery challenged the idea that modern pennies had no surprises left. Soon, others began examining their 2012 cents more closely. A few low-grade examples with minor off-center strikes and signs of weight anomalies surfaced, but none as sharp or well-preserved as Brent's find. A dealer from New York contacted him with an offer of $18,000. He declined. A month later, another collector offered $26,000. Still, he waited. In the summer of 2023, Brent's coin went to auction. The bidding started modestly but rose fast as more collectors recognized its significance. When the hammer fell, the final price stunned him: $81,000. The coin had become a sensation, a modern ghost from an earlier era, wrapped in copper and mystery. Other known examples have appeared since, but they remain exceedingly rare. Most are in lower grades or show less dramatic doubling. Some weigh slightly less, raising questions about whether they were struck on bronze or a heavier zinc variant. Experts continue to debate. The consensus is that fewer than 10 confirmed examples exist with the correct weight, strike clarity, and doubling that define this peculiar 2012 anomaly. Today, the 2012 Lincoln cent has a quiet aura among collectors. To the untrained eye, it's just another penny. To those who know what to look for, it's a ticket to one of the most compelling modern coin mysteries. The traits that define it are precise: a weight over 3 grams, a richer copper hue, doubling on the obverse, and the unmistakable Union Shield reverse in full detail. Each confirmed piece adds another layer to the mystery, deepening the intrigue surrounding how an obsolete material found its way into modern circulation. For new collectors, the 2012-era penny is a reminder that valuable coins don't always come from dusty collections or inherited rolls. Sometimes, they sit in change jars. Sometimes, they pass through your hands without notice. And sometimes, they carry the weight of history in the most literal way, depending on condition, composition, and error severity. A 2012 US 1-cent penny struck in error can now fetch between $30,000 and $84,000, a stunning transformation for a coin designed to be forgotten, yet destined to be remembered.